Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another Connecting the Lines podcast. The original fiber optic networks began to be deployed in the 1970s. Since that time, workforce training for technicians building and maintaining these systems has grown greatly and evolved. Now, with over $40 billion of broadband infrastructure funding about to enter the U.S. market, the new challenge will be to fill demand for properly trained field technicians to support all of this new fiber infrastructure. So today we have two experts in this area, Larry Robbert and Megan O'Brien. Larry, we'll start with you since you're right here. You've got a wide range of experience, over 35 years in telecommunications industry. So that means you started when you were like 4 or 5 years old.
It means
right?
I'm old.
Yeah.
Back in 1800.
Yep. So started out as a repair tech for AT&T when you were 19.
Yep.
How'd you get into that?
It was a long story, but we'll make it short.
Okay.
I moved from Missouri to Illinois. My neighbor was what they call a second level at Illinois Bell. And he asked me, he goes, "Are you interested in working at the phone company?" Oh, yeah. But that ain't the reason he knew I wanted to do that. When I was younger, I actually lived there, then moved down to Missouri, but I used to dumpster dive at what they call a central office when I was young, walking to school. I'd jump into the dumpster and find wire and odds and ends, and I'd try to put that together to see if I could make things like a fluorescent bulb, burn the little filament. And on career day, they used to ask, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And the kids would say, "Oh, I want to be a fireman. I want to be a farmer. I want to be a policeman." And I'd say, "I want to be a phone guy." So I'm a phone guy. Larry the phone guy. I think you've all heard about him.
Were you the only one in your class that wanted to be a phone guy?
I most definitely was the only guy in the class that wanted to be a phone guy.
Okay.
So best job ever, though.
Okay. So you advanced through the ranks to become fiber optic product approval senior manager.
Yep.
What sort of led you down that path?
Oh boy. So my thought process was to take as many positions in the phone company I could to get as well rounded as I could, and I actually did that. I went from as you said, installation repair technician to bearing drops to line for short time lineman to a copper splicer. Used to get bored doing copper splicing, found the fiber splicers, learned how to fiber splice, got bored fiber splicing, took a promotion into engineering, and then just worked my way from engineering to scheduling to being a manager, being an area manager within the staff organizations. And then my last role before I left the company with retirement was product approval for fiber optic products, and that was a great job. I enjoyed doing that. I got to... If anybody used a fiber cable or a fiber closure at the company, they would blame me if something happened because I'm the guy that approved it. But I got to interact with many of the manufacturers, which was I really enjoyed doing that. But I worked hard to get the experience to be able to move into those positions, so that was a lot of fun to be able to do that.
Okay, so now all that has led to you being at PLP, the senior technical advisor, and you oversee all product training for the comms markets.
Yeah.
And how would you explain your job now?
All right. So as a senior technical advisor, just because I had a couple of years with AT&T and Illinois Bell, Michigan Bell, Ameritech, all the names that they morphed into, I came on to be an advisor for a lot of the fiber optic closure products. My background within cable, connectors, and testing, cleaning, that really helped me move into this position to help with questions. Megan can attest. We've gone to customers and worked with our being able to make sure, even down to the connector cleaning, where we find folks aren't cleaning their connectors, blaming the product when actually it's the training of the field forces to make sure they know how to clean the product. So that's what's kind of morphed me into working with the training now. So we train all of our closure products with customers, new customers, existing customers, anybody that needs that training, we're more than happy to jump into it.
Okay, thank you. So Megan joined PLP in 2017 as a part-timer.
Sounds about right.
And you were marketing samples assistant while completing your bachelor studies in mechanical engineering at Akron,
Yes,
Akron
that's correct.
University of Akron.
Wow.
And I think I read somewhere that you worked at a pizza shop.
I did.
Also,
I did.
while all this
So-
was going on. So that's
Yeah, I did. I worked at Marco's Pizza in North Royalton here in Ohio as right before I got employed at PLP while I was trying to finish my bachelor's degree. So went from making pizzas to making, fiber optic closures. Very different industries, but
Right.
sort of the same.
yeah. That was going to be one of my questions. What did you learn working in a pizza shop that you brought to your job here?
Well, I learned that the food industry customers are a little bit angrier than the customers we deal with
Well,
typically.
really?
Yeah, I
kinda
know. It's
surprising.
No, I mean, the fiber optic closures, they require a lot of attention to detail. So does making food most of the time, right? You've got to be careful of what people are ordering and making sure that everything is good. So as far as that goes, attention to detail has always been a priority for me, and it carried over in fiber optic closures as well, because there's a lot of things that can go wrong if you're not careful, you're not paying attention. So that's one of the key takeaways from both jobs I've had. So
Yeah. I think
Pizza.
I know, it makes you hungry, right?
I worked in food service for a little bit in my younger days, and I think, people are crazy about their food, and consistency
Yes.
is so key
Yep.
in the restaurant business, because a pizza shop changes the cheese or the crust or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm done.
Yes, I know.
This is not the same as it was,
Yeah.
10 years ago, so I'm out.
Yeah, I will say that, working at a pizza place before, you always left smelling like pizza. When I leave work here after, building closures every day or training customers, I don't smell like the closures. So that's a huge plus for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
We'd probably get more customers if you did.
I know. We should do like a
Pizza flavored closure.
pizza scented closure.
There you go.
We might win more business.
Okay, so as you made your way into PLP, you were responsible for creating product samples, closures mainly,
The best. She's the best.
used for promotional purposes and training purposes. And that was for PLP's global marketing communications or communications group. And you're currently a senior applications engineer.
Correct.
So explain what that is.
It's a little bit of everything. I basically, if a customer has an issue or they're doing something in the field for the first time, like they are looking at a PLP product and they're gonna put it in a new environment that they're not used to, or they have a unique situation themselves in their network build, they're putting in more cables than they've in one closure than they have before. I kind of deal with trying to find the best solution for our customers depending on their application. So whether that's, mounting brackets for certain things, storing fiber in closures, how we can do it well, that sort of deal. I also handle some of, if, the few times we have some customer issues come up in the field, I'll go in and try to figure out what's going on. Is it a closure problem? Is it a training problem? Is it something happening in the install, like where if it's underground, is there something happening? Are rodents getting in there, ants getting in there and causing havoc, I guess, that sort of deal. So that's primarily what I do from an application standpoint. I just, try to solve as many customer issues as I can, as best as we can.
Right. Also have a certification in OSP. design
Yes.
through the FBA.
Yes, that's correct.
OSP outside plant.
Yep.
All right, I got my acronyms down.
You did.
And you were once named the Fiber Broadband Association's Woman in Fiber
Yes.
Spotlight.
Yes.
And what does that?
Thank you, Larry.
And what does that award mean?
Oh goodness, it's been a while since I've gotten that one. I think that was someone in the industry nominated me, or multiple someone's nominated me for that. There's not that many women in our industry, period. And so the FBA, Fiber Broadband Association, started this award basically to highlight the women in the industry and the waves that we're making, because we are critical to the infrastructure of communications in general, right? We're a little bit more organized than most men. I know, I'm looking at you, Larry. There are certain situations that, sometimes it's beneficial to have a lady on staff, just because we think a little differently than men. And so that award was basically to highlight what I do at POP on the construction of samples and how I handle customers and all the issues and new product development and all that stuff that we just do to kind of highlight a lady in the field, if you will.
Okay.
Yep.
Good. Okay. Hard part's over.
That was the hard part?
Yep. So we can get into some questions and discussion here. Product training explained. So what are we seeing as like the biggest hurdle for fiber deployments when it comes to workforce training these days?
Ooh.
Do you want to take this one, or you want me to take it?
We can.
We'll tag team it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you start and I'll.
All right. Well, the biggest hurdle is the senior workforce. What I mean by senior, I need to be careful saying senior. Mm-hmm. People that retire out of the workforce, that has been in droves, because back in the 80s, the middle to late 80s is when the big hiring happened, when broadband, 90s, a lot of folks came in, a lot of technicians. Well, we're losing those technicians, and we got to backfill those technicians with new technicians. Unfortunately, you've lost technicians and you don't have a lot of on-the-job training. So it is of uber importance that we get these new technicians trained appropriately. Not just trained to you need theory training, you need hands-on training. We need to get the training in front of them. We need a lot of it. So there's many organizations that are jumping on that bandwagon to get that training. And it really isn't a bandwagon. There's a lot of us in the industry that see that. So Megan with the FBA and us with the FBA, we see that. So we're pushing heavily to get that training. And you need our customer base also is recognizing that. So they're reaching out to do training amongst us, pushing it as a manufacturer. We understand that too.
Yeah. I will say, like, for me, so I'm a 90s baby, right? So I'm fairly young. I've only been in the industry about 7 years.
We're old.
But, growing up for me, you had the career center when you were in high school, right? And it was like welding and electricians and like cosmetology, right? You didn't have fiber splicing in the community colleges. And, when we had the select group of people that did the technical side of things in high school, but the majority of us in my small graduating class of 135, we didn't do the technical side. We went to college right after. Mm-hmm. And so it was kind of ingrained in us starting in middle school to kind of like, you needed the college degree. And so we kind of, I don't want to say it this way, but we kind of looked down a little bit on the people who went to technical school, mm-hmm. because, it wasn't growing up. It was like, hey, you have to go to college, you have to get this degree. And we didn't even consider the fact that we were going to hit this hurdle later. Like, thinking back, if they offered fiber optic training, that probably would have been cool for me to do in high school. I probably would have started at a bigger company, a tier 1, tier 2, and done, drop installation or what have you, and gotten in the market a lot quicker than I did. But I also wouldn't have had a college degree. So I think for my generation, it was either you went to college and got the degree and you kind of brushed aside all the hands-on stuff, which is where we're really struggling now because all of the copper splicers who turned into fiber splicers are all retiring. They're taking pension packages. They're all, in my generation, you went to college, or you're, doing welding or you're a mechanic. You're not, you didn't do fiber splicing or any of that sort of training.
Right.
And so I think that's the biggest hurdle right now, how I see it from my generational standpoint.
Do you think that's changing though, with the perception of the trades and that being maybe lesser than going to school?
I think a little bit. I think it needs to get a hell of a lot better, though. I'll say that. We've been in training classes at community colleges. Across the country, we've done training in community colleges. I think, the Fiber Broadband Association is really pushing for community colleges to start it. And some of them are really taking off. And the students love them. You've been in some of those training classes with me. And, it's helping, but it's not. I don't think it's as much as we need it to be right now.
It's the stigma of working out in the field or working with your hands as you got to have your college degree.
Yeah.
There is some change to that. It's okay to use
I
your
would
hands.
say so.
It is okay,
Yeah.
and the money aspect. There's a lot of money to be made in this field, and I think people are realizing that.
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of the perception is
Definitely.
if you're working out in the field with your boots on, you're not making as much as an accountant or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I don't believe that's
No.
the case.
Well.
in all cases.
Yeah.
And they're offering 401k. They're offering if you want to go back to school.
Yep.
These businesses that are going after like your tier 1, your tier 2 telecommunication companies, or even your old cable TV companies, which are still tier 1, tier 2 or communication companies. They're offering a lot to have the employees come through. We did a training up in Seattle in Everett, Washington, and we had junior and senior high school children. Not children. They were when they were in there, they were acting like grown-ups. They were loving it. They were enjoying putting a closure on. They were enjoying. They got to following the FBA course. They got to learn fiber splicing, how to handle a cable, how to properly clean connectors. It was the whole gambit that the FBA is offering, and these kids were taking it and running with it. And they were following the rules. And there are certain things you have to do when you're working with cable, working with closures to make sure, as Megan said, you don't want it to leak, you don't want the bugs, you don't want the ingress of water or anything like that in it.
Right. So back up, I think what you're saying, there's an article that I read that's from last year, but it's basically, $42.5 billion coming in to fund new deployments and upgrades and that. And what this article, the point of this article is that we're just not going to have enough people to work on these things. So this shortage is a little scary. Really.
Yeah,
And it's not just the field technicians doing the work. It's manufacturers. We need the people in the manufacturing. You need engineering. You need the whole gambit of workers, all the way from, they say digging a ditch. No, it's digging a hole to put a pedestal in, putting your cable in, all the way up to somebody to design it, to build the fiber cable. You've got to have. We need the people with manufacturing. If that much money is going to be brought into the communications industry, $42.5 billion. Not in billion dollars, that's a lot of money. I mean, and with that, there's a lot of product that has to be made. There's people that have to make the product. There's got to be the actual physical product. There's just so much that has to happen. Yeah. You've got to train. We're talking training with fiber optics. You've got to train the people to do the inside work. You have to train to make you got to train us, to be in this business of closures at PLP. You've got to train the technicians there's just a lot that has to happen in order for this to work properly. It happened with COVID in 2020. That's where we found out the government has figured out, we need to make sure that everybody can have broadband. That's what they're going. They're going after.
Yeah, one of the notes in this article was, unfortunately, people are leaving towns, just leaving because it's just not, they're not getting the service they need.
Yeah.
So that's obviously terrible for these small towns.
It is absolutely crazy because Larry and I were, or well, not Larry. I was just down in Tennessee. We have a customer down there, and I was talking with him and stuff. And I stopped at this local store. I don't remember what the store was. Out in the middle of Tennessee, and I was chit-chatting with the cashier, and I was like, "So, who do you have as a service provider for internet out here?" And she's like, "Oh, I don't have internet out here. Like, we don't have it." And I just, it kind of baffled me because, living in a suburb of a major city where I do here in Cleveland, I have 5G. I have, fiber to my home. AT&T provides that service. So I've got lightning quick, service to my house. And, this cashier, she was like, "We don't have that here in Tennessee." And I'm like, "This is wild."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
You drive around, you can still see the copper lines are still up in the air. I mean, you don't see the fiber optic anywhere, and they're not using microwave. So it's those areas will get hit sooner or later, but it's just a matter of the funding to get down into those areas.
Right. Yeah. And then in terms of workforce, just to put a number on it, I'm reading here 478,000 jobs or people would be needed to do these deployments. Is that an exaggeration? Or
No.
is that
No, that's probably accurate.
That's probably a little under.
That's probably a little under, yeah.
Because every year we go on, we're losing more of that older workforce. The experience, when I say older, it's experienced workforce. These folks that color code, all that stuff that comes natural, you've got to train that. I mean,
and we're talking about not even just replacing people as they retire. We're talking
correct.
Bulking up this workforce.
So that's just you got a twofold. You got to build the workforce, and you got to take care of the workforce that is leaving.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You got to backtrack or backfill that.
Right. Interesting. I mean, the numbers are crazy.
Your son, perfect example. He's gotten into the industry. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're pretty proud of that, knowing that pretty soon the closures you make, he'll be putting on.
Well,
or you're part of, I should say.
I'm not even really sure, honestly, if he's doing any fiber yet.
Wow.
I think he's still, and that's a whole other thing. Is
still got to maintain
how much how much are we going, and for how long are we going to maintain copper systems when fiber is clearly better? But you can't just turn one switch off and turn another on. Yeah. So it's, So, they need copper guys out there.
Oh, yeah.
They do.
And they have to be trained too. I mean, there's definitely a different experience or a different mindset or training that has to, for a copper. I mean, color code, connectors, ground. It's just total difference in how the cable. And then, unfortunately, you've still got squirrels that chew everything. So.
Right.
Yes.
Well, and that's, I think Keith, when he gets, his day-to-day is mainly fixing things, service calls, and maybe an upgrade here or there. We're not even talking about new deployments yet. I think he's mainly repairs.
Well, the good thing about repairs are that will serve him well once he starts to get into the fiber optic world. He'll know, troubleshooting. You use a TDR instead of an OTDR, but you're learning, how to troubleshoot, how to work with cable, plant.
Right.
And all that will serve him well. There's no doubt about it. That's the training that is immeasurable that he doesn't always get from us doing the training or a book. It's on it's on the job. OJT.
Right.
Or OTJ. Sorry.
Dyslexic with your acronyms.
That's all right. There's a lot of them in this industry.
There
There's a lot of acronyms.
Now, I think there's kind of a trend, probably in our industries and maybe across the board, that back in the old days there would be sort of more specialist type employees, where they really had one job and they were the guy if you wanted to go to, if you needed this done or that done. But maybe there's more of a trend now that we want employees to be able to do multifunction or maybe everything, a little bit of everything. I guess, do you think that's the case with your customers? And B, is that a good way to go?
So you're saying a jack of all trades?
Yeah.
Well, before I would probably say no, and the reason I said no is because of the way I was in the industry. You had different departments. Your funding came out of different monies. So you had expense dollars versus capital dollars. So the expense dollars would be where you pay your phone bill. We'll just use that as an example. You pay your bill, that comes in, that pays for the fixing of the plant. If you invest in the company, that money that comes in, that will pay for the capital to build the plant.
Right.
So before there was a lot of definite. You had to. You still have to make sure as corporations, they got to keep that separate. That's legality type of thing. But for technician purposes, you definitely need more of a rounded technician. Just as you're saying, your son. I mean, he's going to have to know copper, but he's going to probably need to know fiber. And then one day he's going to get a phone call. Hey, we still got copper working way out in this area where the customer in Tennessee doesn't have it. We need to get that fixed because somebody was driving down the street, drove off the road, and hit a pole and took the copper down.
Yeah.
But so you've got linemen that have to place the cable and the poles and the strand and the lashing wire and the attachments. You then have to have somebody, or a pedestal, then you have to have somebody install the actual, they place all that. Then you have to have somebody put it all together, splice it. Then once it's all spliced, you have to test it. Then once it's tested, now you have to, that's just out in the field. Now you've got offices that have to be up and working in order to provide that service coming out. Right. Then after that, now you have to have somebody install it from the location, what we call a terminal, to the customer's house. And then once you install the cable, trench it or do whatever, then you've got to get it working inside the customer's house, dealing with a tester to test to make sure it all works. So you've kind of got to differentiate. Yeah, you still need that segregated areas of where those people are going to work. But out in the field for fiber optics, I think those technicians need to be more rounded, and they are becoming more rounded. Yeah. They're splicing, they're installing, they're placing, they're doing all of that. That's what we're kind of thinking, the down and dirty of what we're discussing, fiber splicing. That is, you want that rounded technician, no doubt about it. It serves a company well, where he doesn't, the company doesn't have to worry about a specialized tech. They can send out just about any one of their technicians and feel comfortable making sure that they're training. So that is an important part. These companies need to make sure that they're getting adequate training. So the FBA, which they're doing, and other companies are providing that very intense, very detailed training. PLP, we helped work with that. We helped build the content. We worked with other experts in the field. FBA brought in a lot of experts from OFS and Corning and to help create these training courses. So these companies, these businesses need to make sure they understand that, and so that those technicians are very detailed trained, and that's what we're going after. Mm. So having that well-rounded technician is very important.
Right.
Yeah.
It took me a while to get there, but I got there.
It did.
I got there.
It's fine.
And Megan, you see this probably in your own position, right?
Yeah. Just speaking from experience in the customers I've talked to, the people I've gone in and trained, you could take a copper splicer and make him a fiber splicer. Mm-hmm. And, then he's a little bit more rounded or more educated. But what I've kind of found over the years is if you start in a very specific area, like copper splicing. So if you're going to copper splice for, let's say, 10 years, and then all of a sudden your network changes and you're going to start putting in fiber. Well, there's a good chance in your 10 years in copper splicing that some of the stuff that you've seen in the field, whether that be bonding and grounding issues or any of that stuff in the copper side, is going to come back for the fiber side. Mm. And so it can actually kind of help you manage issues on the like when you start deploying new fiber stuff, that experience in that copper side. So, you're always going to forever be the expert in copper, but having a knowledge to do the job for the fiber side is important because a lot of it carries over. And it does help solve a lot of issues that you might come across, just to have that knowledge of how it used to be done. Even if you only put together like 1 or 2 copper cases, you still know how it's done, and it can translate into the fiber side for sure. So you're going to have people that are going to have more experience in some areas, but being more knowledgeable overall is going to help you solve more issues in the field.
Right.
Yeah.
It's tough to train new technicians coming in that information.
Yeah.
And that's what we're working on. That's what we're trying to do.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of training, what is something that the industry does when it comes to training that drives you crazy?
Oh boy. Larry's probably got a whole laundry list of things. I think for me, over the years, the thing that kind of drives me crazy is I know, like splice cases, right? We have the Coyote line. There's other cases out there. There's FOSS cases. There's, Multilink. All these companies are making splice cases, right? And so if you're just starting to deploy fiber, for instance, and you have PLP come in and train you on their closure specifically, right? Mm-hmm. Then, let's say in 10 years, this is all hypothetical. In 10 years, you decide you don't want to use PLP products anymore. Now, that's a sad day for us. Or you want to split your offerings between PLP and some other company from a closure perspective, because lead times get crazy and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. Most companies assume a splice case is a splice case is a splice case. So there are certain nuances with every splice case out there that changes. So our closure is different than their closures, all this stuff. And so it helps the technicians to have that company come in and train. Now, I know it's a day that you have to take them out of the field to do that training, but the results you're going to see overall in your network are going to be substantially better if you just have that company come in. And most of the companies do free training. We'll come to you. You can come to us. But that's one of the things that drives me crazy. It's one phone call to Larry, to myself. We'll come in and train you for the day. And your guys will be all squared away. We'll give you some tips, some tricks on how to put the case together if you've never done it. And, we'll point out the differences. We've assembled thousands of cases, not just ours. Everybody's case we've put together. So we understand the nuances on our side as a manufacturer, but that's the thing that drives me absolutely insane is it takes one phone call and you can learn the nuances of a new closure fairly quick.
My biggest part is train the trainer. We don't have enough trained people in the industry. Mm-hmm. I don't know if our industry, we talked about it in the beginning, they're just starting to see the light, literally. That was a good one. The laser light. That we need more trainers, but we need more people to train the trainers too. So, and that's what we're working on. We do train the trainer sessions. That's one of the things we really want to make sure of. When you go and visit a location, and one of the questions I did at one of the trainings I did, I asked the question, has anybody ever put air pressure on their closure to test for leaks? And nobody raised their hand, and there was 55 people in that room. Mm-hmm. And what we have found is pretty much just about every time, if you would put that air pressure on there and do a soap test on it, you're going to find out where your issues are almost immediately. Unfortunately, what I've found out just by asking a question, is there a reason why you don't? Well, we were never trained to do that.
Yes, I get that often.
We were never trained to do that. We make sure we train that. So that's, honestly, if you could get somebody to pressure test a closure before they put it away, yes, you're going to have issues. You're going to have Mother Nature is going to provide a rat to chew a cable, our buddy squirrels. You're going to have man-made where the backhoe, the auger, the vehicle, but a closure leaking is a failure that could have been found early. So that's the biggest one. I don't want to give all my other ones.
Well, it's kind of that quality control and attention to detail, the pizza shop thing we talked about earlier. You got to do it the same way every time. And once you are properly trained, theoretically, you won't have those leaks, and you'll be doing it at the same time.
I had a customer say, "Well, if your closures are so good, why do you have to train on it?" And it kind of caught me off guard. I went, "Wow, okay." And the main reason is we want to make sure that when you put your closure, when you do the steps to put the closure on, we created the steps for a reason, and you build the closure that way. And every time you go to somebody when I train that person, oh, I didn't know we were supposed to do that first.
Yeah.
There's little tiny things that putting your fiber in on the bottom instead of the top for dressing for later. Oh, I didn't even think of that. You know what? That makes a big difference later on. But the customers that don't call us, that's probably the biggest beef with the training.
Okay.
Just
call us.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's going to be paramount going forward because there's going to be new corporations, there's going to be new customers, there's going to be new, employees. Just don't think that on-the-job training is the only way to go. It's not always the only. As Megan said, there's some nuances or some little tricks that we may have that are going to help you. One little trick is worth us being there if it's going to save your corporation a lot of time. One of my old jobs was time increments. I worked on time management, so I know taking people out of the field is not the most economical thing to do. Short-term pain, long-term gain.
Yeah.
It's what you got to do. You got to take the pain, take them out of the field, get them in. We've trained some places that have taken their whole crew out for 2 days. It was fantastic. It's a luxury they did not have, but they understood the need to do it, and I'm sure it's paying dividends for them.
Yeah,
Right.
And the technicians like it. I mean, they love their field work, but to come into the office for 2 days and learn a little bit more about a closure, a couple tricks that'll save them time overall in their trailer, it pays in dividends for sure. Yep.
So the first fiber network was deployed in the 70s or 80s. And
Before my time.
Larry, this might be a question for you, not so much Megan.
Yeah, this is before
Being the
me.
more experienced. How has workforce training and development, particularly in these types of jobs in this industry, evolved over that time?
Well, the number one way it's evolved is it's different. Your plant is different. Your cabling is different. We don't use fiber cable or copper cable that's 20, large. It's a smaller cable. That in itself, placing is different. Storm load from ice, wind, just so many different things. Back to, with the difference in that, the evolving. When I first started, they used an LMS training system that I had a lot of training. I mean, we would get trained on how to sneeze properly. Honestly, I mean, there was training how to sit properly in a chair. You had training on that. But the smaller corporations, they didn't do that training. Then that some of that went away because it was too taxing, meaning it was too much for the people to do all that training. Yeah. Well, when that happened, what's going to happen? Some things are going to fall aside. So your safety organizations make sure paramount that safety doesn't go away. That training never went away.
Okay.
I'm not saying that. No, it's more of the hands-on the training for, that comment that was made. Well, why do you need to train me on your closure? It should be intuitive enough, basically, to put it together. I said, well, yeah, you can follow directions and put it together, but it's easier for us to show you. But the bonding and grounding has stayed the same, but you're using an air pressure under copper if it's in the underground. You may have lead. You don't have that with the fiber. Well, you may have a different type of fiber cable if it's submarine cable that goes underwater, or it's in a toxic area like a steel mill. You got certain type of cables that even fiber cable, the protection has to be a little bit different in those locations. But your standard every day, it's once you got into the 90s, 2000s, I mean, the training was still there, but your training the technicians with a formal training did not happen as much as it did earlier, and then it's starting back up again. It's knowing that the field needs that training because we're bringing in such green workforce. But You also had an older workforce. You didn't need to bring in that the newer workforce because you had enough people there. You had enough people in the industry to take care of what was needed to be taken care of. So the training wasn't really needed as much. And the other thing is, what's really new that's come out with fiber products, fiber closures? Not a lot new has come out. Mm-mm. The closure itself it's pretty much the copper closures haven't evolved. You may do a little tweak here, a little tweak there, but overall, it hasn't really evolved much. But your workforce is now evolving. You're bringing in the 18, 19, 20-year-olds, like when I started, that need that training.
So what about women in the industry? The numbers I've seen are, women are 50% of the population.
Correct.
4%.
Yes.
Out there in the field.
Yes. Construction
trades.
Yep.
How do we change that, or are we changing that?
I think we're trying to change it. I think it's one of those perception things too, right? Because women are kind of stereotyped as weaker, and I'll say that as a woman. Basically, hey, like I can't do this because I'm not as strong as Larry or what have you, or Todd or whoever it is, right? I will say I never really stood behind that. I actually went into mechanical engineering because there were only 3 women in that program, and I said, I want to show the boys that girls can do it too. Now, when I graduated, only 2 women graduated with me and someone else. So we had a girl drop out. For me, in the fiber industry itself, a lot of the women you'll see are either in higher management positions, VPs or what have you, or they're kind of like inside. So they're working sales or that sort of deal. Or engineering, yeah. So I've seen a lot more girls get into STEM fields, engineering, all that stuff. From our industry standpoint, I think I've probably seen in my 7 years here and the thousands of technicians I've trained, I've only seen 3 female splicers.
Really?
In all the companies and in all the places I've been. From a splicing side, it gets a little difficult for women because we don't like the cold. We don't like being in extreme heat all day. And so that one is one of those ones where you have to have a really strong woman to do that job. So kudos to all of those female splicers out there because I couldn't do that every day. I can do it occasionally, but not all the time. But I have seen an increase in the younger generations coming through in women specifically. So,
yeah, when we were up in Seattle Everett with Snow Isle STEM, the Snow Isle Tech, there was about 20% girls were in that class, which was a pretty good number.
Yeah, that's great.
And the fastest ones and the cleanest was
the girls.
Yeah, they did now. A couple of the guys were. I'm not going to knock them either. They did great. So there are a few things that are definitely physical. There's no doubt about it. You're pulling a lasher to lash cable. You're placing cable. You got to lift a manhole cover. That's too.
Yeah.
And in the wintertime when it's frozen, to get that out is not an easy thing.
You got to chip it out of the ice, and it's not something
it's a lot of work, but it's a satisfying job. So at the end of the day, I love that industry. To this day, I kick myself for taking a management position, not because it was bad to take it, but I enjoyed being a technician out in the field. So, but we need to make sure we have more women in the industry. You have to. I mean, I've tried to get my daughter to go into it, and if she's thinking about it, I don't know. She probably says, I don't want to be grumpy like you. I said, no, that's not why I'm grumpy, dear.
Yeah, yeah. I will say, so the FBA does have a Women in Fiber event that they usually do. It's usually at Fiber Connect. This year to be in Nashville at the end of July here. I've been a part of that program for many years, and the number of attendees that attend that luncheon at Fiber Connect has grown probably quadruple since they started that. Last year, there was not a single seat was open in that whole auditorium, but when we started, there was maybe, 10 to 12 tables of 8, and now we've got 30 tables that are stuffed full of just women chit-chatting in the industry, different roles, obviously, across the board there. But it's definitely grown, and the FBA is pushing it, and we're trying to push it on our side. But, women are needed just as much as men in this market. So
Well, we got to get that done.
we do, yes.
Okay, so when you're training new people, male or female, I guess, coming in, this is fiber techs seem to be a kind of a craft type of trade.
Yeah.
I think you would say
Skilled trade.
skilled trade.
Yeah.
So I see on social media, LinkedIn, those kind of Instagram, these guys and ladies post their work.
Yes.
Just pictures. So it's this pride in craft,
Yes.
pride in ownership. I did this. I put this together. So I guess my question is that just a inherent trait for someone, for young people that are interested in doing this type of work? Is that just something that's already there, or are you as trainers sort of maybe instilling some of that?
Well, one of the things I do state, and whenever I do training, is I'll revert back to technicians used to stamp their initials inside the closure. Lead closure, stainless. We've had people leave names in closures. I won't say everything else that's been left in a closure. I've had confetti. I've had all kinds of stuff put into closures. But it's a pride thing. We don't advocate it. We don't say no. We don't say yes. I think these field technicians are doing it because they're proud. That I think what you're referencing, there's stuff on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, all that, where people posting how good a work they've done, LinkedIn especially. And you should see it's that you're doing a good job.
Right. All the comments are like,
you're doing a great job. Yeah,
spot on. All your lines are straight.
But then you'll have some people, which I'll sit back and unfortunately I'll analyze it, but I'll never call somebody out like that. But I'll analyze it, and then you have people that analyze it, and they'll send something out to go after it. But you know what? Why? Do it offline. Do something. You can always contact somebody different. It's saying, I did this. Take a look. We don't, like I said, we don't say yes or don't say no. Yeah. I do enjoy showing pictures of horrible plant, what people don't do, and why we're doing the training. And it seems to resonate very well. I mean, there's some great pictures. There's one site, WTF Technician. That's if you want a good site to go look at some funny stuff, go on to WTF Technician. But yeah, I think it's just that pride, letting other people know, I did this. Come take a look.
Yeah.
And I will say, I still drive around. I put that closure up 28, 30 years ago. My wife won't drive with me in Illinois anymore because I do that a lot. So.
Yeah. I mean, for me, on my generation, right, as soon as we didn't have phones until we hit middle school. If you were like one of the rich kids, you had a phone that could take pictures in middle school.
Oh, cell phone, I was going to say.
Yeah.
We didn't have a landline.
So we grew up sort of in high school, growing into adults with these devices that could take pictures. And so any chance you got to take a picture of, and this is really sad, I don't do this, but of your food, of, hey, I got this new outfit, check me out. I got, this new car, check it out. All this stuff. It's my generation's way of saying like, hey, look at what I did, be proud of me. And I think some of that plays into this industry that we work in as well. Like, hey, you checked out my latest sandwich for lunch and it looked great, didn't it? Like, be jealous of me. Also look at my fiber splice tray. It looks just as good, if not better, than the sandwich I ate for lunch. So for me, and some of the things I've seen for the newer, younger technicians coming into this is a lot of, hey, we grew up sharing things across the internet. We had MySpace, we had Facebook before it was popular. And so it kind of moved into our work, right? We all became adults. We all got adult jobs, and we're having fun with our jobs. We're exploring new places. We're doing new things, and we take pride in our work. And so I think the pictures we're seeing of splice trays, and here's what it was before. And then I came in and fixed it, and look at the before and after and see, the results.
Right.
One of the things we do, or at least I do, I make sure that I state, and what we're training is to make, you may go into this closure again. You want it to be placed correctly. Or the person sitting next to you may go into it. You want them to be able to do it correctly.
Yep.
You don't want them to come back and hit you over the head with the closure that they had to replace because it was no good.
You don't want to go back into a fiber optic case and be like, I know who did this. This was Larry's work, just by looking at the tray. You want to make it easier for whoever's going to go back in. It might be you, it might be Larry, it might be Todd that goes back in. You were just trying to help each other in this industry because we're a very helpful community. And so if you leave your closure looking nice, then you're going to have it's going to be easier for the next guy that goes in.
Not Todd.
Not Todd. Just Larry's.
Okay, let's talk about standards a little bit. So obviously, when we're training, you're training, there's certain standards that you are training people to. The question, I guess, is, are there universal standards, or when you're training, are you considering that some companies, some contractors might work to their own standards, or what considerations do you have to
go?
Every company runs things a little different. Once you build a splice case, some companies will go back in and quality control each case that's put into their network. Mm-hmm. Some companies look at them in depth. They'll open the closure, go through all the trays, make sure everything's labeled, all that stuff. Some companies will look, if the closure is deployed on a piece of strand, right? They'll stand underneath the closure and be like, yep, that's a closure. It's good.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Every company and every training we go into runs things a little different. It's just how the operators work, how the networks are built. But for us, from a manufacturing side and as a vendor side, we try to follow, what it's going to take to give you a superior product, right? So what it's going to take for this closure not to get water in it, or, any of this stuff. So we follow our own procedures going in knowing that whoever we're training is going to be doing things a little differently. So, with that being said, flash testing, we talked about a little bit earlier, pressure testing the closure is a standard at some companies. Some companies completely don't even know what it is. So they're like, we don't have to do that, all that stuff. So, we'll go through flash testing every single training class. Mm-hmm. But when we leave that room, we can't guarantee that that company's going to do that. We always recommend it, all this stuff. So we kind of follow our own procedure, knowing that every company operates differently.
But to that point, we want to make sure that the company understands why we're doing this, and hopefully they take that procedure and put that into their practice. Yes. To make it they are doing that.
Okay.
That's a key. You're hitting on a good point there. What we make our standards, hopefully that company takes our standards and makes it their standards too.
Right.
For doing the closure. That's what we want to push for. That's what you got to make sure of. That is a key. I mean, where I used to work, we would take the corporation standards. We would take whoever the manufacturer standards, and that would morph into our standards. We may tweak a couple things, but we would make sure we work with the manufacturer about that. I mean, there's a couple reasons for it. There's warranty issues. There's little tiny things that people don't think of, but we're standing by our product.
Yeah.
But we also want to make sure that the company is doing it correctly. Mm-hmm. So we highly recommend they follow the standards.
Highly recommend, but there's no guarantee.
You can't. I mean, but after we're done, if we haven't gotten the company to go, then we're probably not doing our job right.
Yeah. I know we see this on the utility side at the linemen's rodeos where, we could be doing a product demonstration and do something a certain way, apply a tie or something, and guys standing there, with experience. Oh, we don't do that.
Yeah, we get that all the time.
Like, well, you have to. You need to.
Yeah.
We don't do that.
Yeah. We don't tuck the tails on the dead ends. Or, we don't flash test the closures. Well, how many do you get back in?
Yeah. We don't put the tie to
that was the question. Raise your hand. How many people does not flash test? Nobody. How many people have worked on a repair of a closure? Mm-hmm. Every one of them raise their hands.
Yeah.
Next.
Yeah, but I mean, like you say, you can only do so much, and
Yeah, but we can only do so much, but it's also, I think it's incumbent on us to make sure the customer understands why we're doing what we're doing
Right.
and encourage them to take what we,
as trainers, you're
yes.
And it's one of those things too where, we will get the call from a customer like, hey, can you come in and train us? So they already are asking for our assistance, our input, if you will. And so when we go in and train and we're like, hey, are you guys flash testing, for instance? And they say, no, we haven't been trained on it. Okay, well, we're going to train you on it. And so I feel like when we go, most of the time when we go into trainings, we know that they're going to be doing things differently. And so we highly recommend certain things. But the customers that we, are training are highly receptive to what we're telling them. They like the tips and tricks that we're providing. They like, hey, here's the procedure, how you can save time, all this stuff. So they're a little bit more receptive is what I've found because they're calling us to kind of, hey, can you help us out? We're struggling with this, or hey, we're trying this new closure size you have. We're using these big ones, but now we're moving to the smaller one. Can you come in? And so I feel like that's one of the things that's great about this industry is, when we get a call and we'll impart our wisdom on the customer, and then they're usually pretty receptive. Typically, I've not seen any real pushback on any of that stuff.
So a couple years ago, I had the good fortune to go to one of the training events because we were doing kind of a case study video on the FBA was
Is that Wilson?
doing a training. It was in Green.
Yeah, I think it was
Yeah.
Wilson College.
Yeah, City
Yeah,
of
yeah,
Wilson.
Wilson.
Yeah, that was
Yep.
that was the initial FBA at a college.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah. So I was there, and obviously interesting to see these different groups that are, you've got a school, I think it was a community college.
Yeah.
The manufacturers, us doing the training, operators and contractors, the trainees, and then the FBA. Like it's a lot to coordinate. It
Yes.
seemed like. So how does that come together? Like, is this a team effort, or
It is definitely
Okay.
it's all a community, right? We all want to be there to support each other. So, we, on our side, we can handle sending trainers, sending material. We have no problem doing that, but coordinating it with a college, it gets a little bit more complicated. But I feel like it's definitely a group effort anytime any training takes place. It takes, the sales team, the instructors or the trainers, the attendees, all of these people just kind of come together because they know what they need, and we're there to impart our wisdom and share, what happens in the industry, and here's things that can go wrong, here's how to do it right, here's all this stuff. But it's most definitely a group effort every single time.
So, perfect thing. The FBA has created a module system. So you start at module 1, you finish at module 12. Yeah, but everybody that helped create, which people from our team helped create that content, it was just for that reason. It's a layout. It's theory, then it's hands-on, and then go to the next theory, hands-on, next theory, hands-on, and it's chronologically in an order. Doesn't mean you have to do that if you take that FBA program, you can kind of mold it a little bit following that. But it was built for a reason, and that's just for that. So you have logistically, you can lay things out. You can, you're learning theory about cable. Then you go in and you open cable. You're learning theory about what fusion, you're splicing, splice loss. Then you go splice a cable. Then you get to what all wraps it up. It's ours. It's doing a closure. You show pictures of bad closures. You show pictures of good closures. Then it talks about closures up in the air, in the underground, on a wall, on a pole, and which closure you should pick, what size. Now you've picked it. Now we get in and train how to do the closure. So it's very logistically, scheduling, all that's laid out. So a lot of other programs do the same thing. To me, FBA does a fantastic job with how they laid it out, because we helped with that. So,
Yeah.
But you had a lot of industry experts that did that. They've been in the industry a long time. we've all felt the pain of not following something like
Yes.
that. Where you, we work very hard when we do the training. We send out some paperwork to the customer, asking them how many people are going to be there, how big is our location, do you have the tools, like Megan was talked about. Cable. We provide how much cable to open. It's easier for us, and it makes it a lot more. How do you say? It's smooth to have everything ready to go and prep beforehand. So having that setups is very important.
Yeah. But I mean, a training class could fall apart if you don't have a full team working on it, right? If it's just, you trying to get together and train your technicians, if it's a company, you'd probably succeed. But if you're trying to do multiple closures from multiple manufacturers, or, you're working with a new cable, it's a different manufactured cable than you've used before. If if you're not familiar with it and you're trying to train your technicians internally on it, it's going to be more difficult for the technician. Yeah. So, the group effort is really to make sure that, we're following kind of the standard that the FBA made with the module system, the OptiPath program. And that's kind of the Bible for training, if you will, for workforce development. But, if you're trying to do it internally, you might succeed. But if you've never used any of the products before, seen the cable, it's going to make it harder for your technicians for sure if you don't get a team effort on it.
Yeah. We did a training in Illinois. It encompassed 4 different companies, all came together in one location. All the companies worked together, which was amazing. Mm-hmm. They all worked together to help coordinate it, cable, set up tables, all the way down to chairs, garbage cans, things you don't really think about too much. Cable open beforehand. It was a pleasure doing that training over 2 days. Sometimes, if you don't have that, you're sitting out in a parking garage opening cable at 2:00 in the morning to prepare for that class that starts at 8:00 in the morning, because you didn't have it all coordinated.
Yeah, I will say that session that I went to was a couple days and very well organized. And I think what was really appreciated by the trainees was that, this was all hands-on. Mm-hmm. Everything's right there on the table for you, teaching you about all the components, which, this is hands-on type of work. So, you have to have everything there. But I think it was like you could see that they were like, oh, okay, we're actually doing this. This is what I'm actually going to be doing out in the field, rather than, watching a PowerPoint presentation or a video or something. Like, okay, we're doing it.
Yeah, we're doing it. Yes, it's in a air-conditioned building instead of in my splice trailer where it's 115 degrees. Yeah. But, it's the same procedures you're going to follow out in the field. And so that's kind of, from our side, that's how we handle things, is we want you to get your hands on the product, because if you're going to have problems in a controlled environment that we can't resolve, then you're going to have even more problems in the field. So we love training. Larry and I both train a ton over the years, thousands of technicians. But if the more hands-on you can get with a closure before you start work in the field, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah, a program like that that the FBA put on, that would be something that somebody like the trainees would pay for those. So talk about, Megan, I think you had a trainer. So you were talk about training the trainer. Yeah. You had a trainer from Job Corps in recently. Correct. Yes. And so talk a little bit about that program and what that does. So that's, as I understand it, it's pretty much free training for people that
that is correct. For it. So just as like a general, so we had a guy in from Job Corps. He was an instructor at our facility in New York, and their program was adding fiber into it. So they had an existing, I want to say it was distribution class that they were underground residential distribution class or something like that. They had a class that they were running, and they weren't really running any fiber yet, but because of the Buy America funding that's coming out and all that stuff, they wanted to make sure that their students, who are mostly lower income or, still in high school trying to get their GED and stuff, attend these classes. And these classes they house the kids, they feed the kids, and the kids go to class 40 hours. So it's basically like a job. And it's great for the kids because they don't have to pay a dime. They just have to live on this campus, and they attend these classes. And then at the end, they basically get a certificate from Job Corps. And then most of the time, I think Joe said it was about 95% of the kids leave with a job placement. Now, that could be somewhere in the area that they're from. So if they're traveling from Chicago to New York to attend this Job Corps training, they could get a job in Chicago where they're from, or it could be somewhere completely different. It depends on them. It could be over in California. It could be in Florida. But a large percentage of those kids are lower income. They can't afford college. They can't get it. And so that program is vital for, the workforce now because, you go there, you live there, and you're taking these classes, and it's fantastic. So they were incorporating fiber into this program that they were doing, and the instructor doesn't know what fiber is. And so he came in to our offices here, and we trained for 2 days on fiber closures. We walked through what fiber is, how the system works, how the light goes through the fiber, and basically building splice cases. So we did fiber splicing. We did it all. Basically anything fiber related, opening cable, all that stuff we did with him. And then he's going to incorporate some of that into the classes that he's currently teaching, and that's supposed to start at the beginning of 25, I believe. He said he was starting those fiber sessions.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's other corporations like Learning Alliance.
Yeah.
They work closely with the military that come out. They do the same thing. They house, they train, they do tower training along with telecommunications training using the FBA, the optic path. It's great.
Right.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic.
So that that training is available for very low or no cost.
Well, the one you're depending on where you're at, where you're going, government funded or part of the education. I mean, they all have to report to the government. I don't know what side of it, probably something with education. They definitely have to report back because these are the government stamping it. Sure. So yeah.
And I know Job Corps specifically, like if you leave that training class without a job, they will help you, get a job at some point. And it's going to be in the industry that you took that class in. So even if you move to a company right out of taking that class and you move to Florida and you call Job Corps and you're like, I want to move to Chicago. I have to be closer to my family. They'll help you find a job in Chicago because it's all federal funding. So, they'll do whatever they can job placement wise. If 5 years down the road you want to move again, you want to move to Virginia, then they'll help you find a job in Virginia if you can already with the connections you have.
Yeah.
So those type of training organizations, your companies are, as long as it's a certified training using the optic path, they're your ATTs, your Verizons, your Frontiers, they're looking at those companies. That they can hire somebody that's already trained. So that's one less expense that they have to worry about bringing in a technician that's already trained.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Right.
That's work. I mean, it's advantageous of the corporations to work with those companies and the government to get those people trained so they can bring them in.
Right. So what is the time frame of, say you do one of these 2-day programs? You're not at that point after 2 days ready to go out and
no.
no. So what is
those
that time
trainings
frame
are usually those trainings that we're talking about with the Job Corp and Learning Alliance. They're weeks training. It's what we train is we're just training on our closure to be able to use the closure. It may take a day or two, 4 hours, 6 hours, but those large training, it's an investment in time. There's definitely a time. This isn't something, especially if a technician just came, or a boy or girl, or somebody just came from a different industry or high school or came out of college.
Yeah.
They don't know plant. They don't know cable. Like you had to train the gentleman on light. That's the theory of it. You need to know theory to know. So you're going to be trained on all that light loss, OTDR, TDR. You're testing end-to-end testing, A to Z, Z to A, reflectance. There's just so much stuff that they got to learn. Cleaning. Did I say cleaning?
So I know for a fact that the Job Corps training class was 16 weeks, and it was 40 hours a week.
Oh my goodness.
So at the end of that, you get a certificate. But that certificate does include a lot of hands-on training. But I'm not going to say that you're going to be 100% proficient once you leave that 16-week class. So that whenever you move to that company, you might have another 16 weeks learning what your new company wants you to do. And so there's additional training there as well. But I think most of them are, 16 weeks depending on what you're doing. I know the Learning Alliance has a couple different classes that you can take. And so it could be, 24 weeks. It could be a little bit longer depending on how many different classes you want to take.
Yeah. So what's next? What changes are we seeing in terms of training, how these programs work? Is anything new coming down the line?
Oh, the funding. The funding coming in, the programs, like Megan just alluded to, the costs. You're able to get this training when you come out of school, if you so choose. The availability in this market it's crazy. To me, it's endless what you can do. You don't have to do the same thing every day if you choose not to. But the training purpose, the ability to take what the government is providing and being able to take that, get into this industry. I wish I could get everybody to come into it. It's trade schools, high schools, colleges. It's a great thing to get into. I wouldn't have. I went to college when I was working. I ended up getting my degree that way. It wasn't easy, but I did. I had a lot of help, but I did it. But you can do that. These companies will have. We do it. PLP does that. So the corporations need to entice the employees to come to them, and the government needs to do this, which they're doing. Is they need to entice the workforce to get trained to go into these. Where we need it. We need Tennessee to have broadband service. We need those. Illinois, Ohio. I'm just talking Midwest areas. You got California. You're talking all these locations. Yeah, exactly. It isn't. It's endless.
Yeah. I think a couple of years ago it was a little bit harder to do training just in general because we didn't really have industry guidelines for workforce development or training. So since the FBA kind of created this program and it's been picked up by numerous, colleges and us and other vendors and stuff, I think it'll help propel the training that we're seeing. But, a couple of years ago, there wasn't a program. And so the FBA saw that there wasn't a program and saw the issues we were having in the workforce. And so they brought in industry experts to create this. And so I think it's a very good guideline. And I think it will really help us in the future as an industry, training the technicians with that program and kind of following along with the things that, the world leaders sat together on, basically.
But from a PLP standpoint, we need to make sure that we're getting the word out to train our product so that we can be we're not a roadblock in that training with those, whether it be FBA or whoever else it is. But we need to make sure that we're getting out there, and when we sell the product, that we are, which we do. We're very good at that. We are. I don't know many companies that jump out like we do to help with the training. Always have. From back in the copper days with Dan Leck. He was out there running ragged. John, Hofstadter, all the trainers, they were out there all the time. So
Yeah, that's one thing that does come up frequently from our customers. We say, hey, do you want us to come in and train you? And they've been a customer for years, and they're like, you offer training? And then they're like, well, what's the cost of the training? And we say, it's zero. We'll come to you. We'll provide the products. We just want to make sure that your team feels comfortable in what they're doing in the field. And so A lot of companies, a lot of manufacturers, a lot of vendors will do the same. All you have to do is ask the question. And I think that's something that customers don't realize that they can do. They don't realize that they can reach out from the company they're buying products from and get a response, for one. And for two, if they have a question about something, we're going to help for sure on our side, but most companies in this industry are going to provide some support.
Okay. Well, I think we did it. Before we end, I've got one more question.
Oh, it's the hardest question of all.
Hardest question. Dogs or cats? Megan, go.
I am a diehard dog girl. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Larry, dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Yeah.
All right.
Larry and I
That's
both
the
have
right
dogs.
answer, by the way.
Yeah.
It's the right answer.
Cats are right. Dogs.
Yeah.
Cats are too independent.
I've had dogs the longest. And so once you have 3 at one time, you can't really back away from having dogs. So,
Agree.
yeah.
One more time.
Thanks, both of you, so much.
Thanks,
All right,
Bill.
Thanks, Bill.